So I'm sat here with Pamela Cunningham, who's going to tell us a little bit more about what she does and how she started her new business, Growth and Performance.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I am officially 4 months into business.
Oh my
I am still
gosh.
so new into it. I honestly can't believe how quick things have transpired. In June, I left my corporate job. So my background was tier 1 procurement. I've worked with companies like Balfour Beatty and Langer. And in all honesty, I just felt like I was going into work day to day and I wasn't really giving much. I was earning a salary, but that was honestly it. So in June, I thought I'll take the plunge. I left my job with 2 months buffer, 2 month
Wow.
mortgage payment. And by third month in business, that was me. I was making an income and I'm going into my 4th month now. I've got a nice, healthy client base. So I've got clients that have maybe 200,000 turnover to clients that have got 22 million turnover. So things are going really well.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So talk to us a bit more about where you realised that corporate wasn't for you anymore and why you made that change.
Actually, a couple of years ago, I transitioned from a role with the main contractor into the client, and I honestly thought this was it. I thought I was settled. This was the best career move, and in actual fact, it was the worst career move.
Oh.
Working with a client was just really different, and I was taken into a meeting room and was told that I was prioritising my children over my operational role. And for me, as a mum, I thought that, well, I didn't think conversations like that still happened in this day and age. And then I spent 6 months trying to prove to other people that I could do it. You know, I tried to get a better position. And I did. I got a better position in another business. And although this business was was more accommodating of me being a parent, I was still missing out on so much. I was up and out the house. I was in the office for 7:30 every day, and then I was paying for someone else to pick up the children. And then I was coming back home. I wasn't getting that opportunity to see them. And to be honest, I just felt like I needed to be a bit more present.
Yeah.
As well as that, I always remember sitting on the subway and I would be thinking, I felt a bit of me draining away, do you know? When I was home, I felt really inspired, felt really driven. And then as soon as I sat on the subway, I just thought, oh, this again. And I thought, I know I could do something better. So I started to think about what the industry needs, where my skill set, what's my strengths. And for me, that is connecting people. That is, you know, asking questions and engaging in conversation that people wouldn't necessarily have all the time.
Yeah.
For example, a small trade business, they are working sometimes 6-7 days a week. They don't always have space to have these open, inspiring conversations about where do you really want to take your business, what contracts do you want to do, what projects do you want to be on. My husband's got a trade business, so I'm very used to having those conversations at home, but also from that tier 1 procurement perspective in the boardroom. So what I've essentially done is just joined those two together, and I now have a job in a business that I can be that parent that's present, but also use my strengths to support other businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spoke about like bringing the two roles together to kind of create this niche. Do you feel like you found a gap in the market though, where that there is a real need for businesses, particularly within the construction sector, to have that type of support that you offer?
I definitely feel like there is a gap there. But I think, you know, society always tells us that find a niche. If you find a niche, then that's you set. I'm actually finding it the opposite. I'm finding that because the services that I offer are so different to the norm, you know, it's not traditional consultancy, but for me, I don't feel like a business coach. Like I wouldn't feel that I would be experienced enough to say that. But what I do have is that experience from main contractor. I know what the main contractor wants. So I'm able to, I suppose, mentor businesses into delivering what they want from the offset rather than muddling their way through projects and finding it out the hard way. And I think it's really difficult, in my experience is it's really difficult to try and promote that and showcase what that value is, because nobody else is really doing it. So I don't really have anybody else to link with, I suppose. So although I do feel like I found a niche, I'm finding it really difficult to promote that.
Okay, well, let's try and make it easier for you. So if I was to ask you, like, what is the biggest challenge that your clients faced or have faced before you stepped in to help? throw out some of the biggest challenges that they have.
One of the things that I always talk about is survival mode. So if you think that you're a smaller business, so let's just say you've got a team of anything between 5 and 10 people, and you know that you've taken on one smaller commercial contract and you liked it. You liked the time that it took. Your resource are busy, they're kept going for a couple of months, and you think, yeah, business would be better if we had another project, if we had something bigger, something longer. The issue that some of my clients face is where do you find those projects? How do you build a pipeline where you know that, for example, your team are going to be busy from, you know, month 1 to month 4, but month 5 and 6 are quiet, but then month 7 your order book picks up again. My clients seem to it's not in their practice to look at that pipeline, so they get a tender, they submit rates, they win it. Ideally, if they do, they win it, and then they go onto site, they do the project, and then when the project's finished, they try again. It's really
like reactive.
Yeah, reactive. I suppose. So what I'm trying to do is take a step back and look at it from a wider scale.
Yeah.
And it's not just doing projects that come to you. It's what do you want to do? What do you want your business to be known for?
Yeah.
And what projects do you want to be a part of? And then again, that next layer is those clients that are delivering those projects. What do they want? You know, and if your clients are prioritising sustainability and your business doesn't look at that at all, then, you know, the reality is you're probably not going to get in front of them. So again, it's taking that proactive approach and looking at the client, what the client wants, what projects they're doing, and how you can be involved in those projects. So I suppose the first challenge is definitely pipeline.
Yeah.
And then I think another one is cash flow. And cash flow is ideally, you know, where someone like you and the educational content that you put out is going to be more beneficial, because for tradespeople, cash flow, they're very protective of it, and I understand why. But if we could start to implement some positive lines of credit, I suppose is the way that you would refer to it. Instead of looking at it as a negative thing, you know, how do we look at it positively and use it as a tool to get access to these bigger projects?
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on something there about how people, especially within the construction sector or any industry, they think that finance is a negative, or it's got negative connotations attached to it. And that's something that could be really off-putting. They think that they're maybe doing something wrong, or that they're not good enough because they can't do it themselves, like organically. But actually, when somebody's in a position where they're taking on those larger contracts and they're ready to step up and do more, which is obviously probably why they've engaged with you in the first place, because they feel like they want to do more often than not, they don't have the cash flow in their business right now because the projects they're doing are smaller, and they're not able to have the reserve pile to the level that it needs to be for the likes of like a tier 1 contractor. So we often find that they actually have to be able to show proof of viability, that they can actually get through the full project, they've got the resources to be able to deliver. What do you find is something that clients would say to you when it comes to like cash flow struggles? Is there anything that they've talked to you about specifically as to why they have that fear?
Yeah, I don't think they ever bring it up. It's always me.
Really?
It's almost like an untouched subject.
Okay.
It's like, and again, it's if things are going well, you know, they're really protective of their cash flow because they need it in case anything doesn't go to plan.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's always me that brings that conversation to the table, and it's definitely a bit of a taboo subject. And I think that's something that I'm really keen to change, and it's to, you know, let's just see exactly where your finances are. My background in procurement, we always talk to businesses about their turnover. Now, from a client perspective, saying to a business, what's your turnover? They'll always tell you straight away because they know that they kind of need to prove that they've got a good turnover to work with you. But from my perspective now as a consultant, when I'm saying to business, you know, what's your turnover? They're a bit offended by it, which I'm finding quite interesting.
Okay.
And there'll be businesses, I suppose, who are comparing themselves to other businesses and thinking, well, maybe I'm not where they are.
Okay.
But in all honesty, I think it's definitely a topic that we should be talking about more openly, not necessarily your business turnover openly, but more what can we do to positively increase your cash flow and allow yourself to maybe invest in other areas, to know that you've got that, like, I suppose, that risk pot there. And again, it's things like that small businesses, they don't know what a risk pot is. They've never even considered it before. It's not typical language that they hear. And myself, coming from these tier 1 contractors, this is the kind of information that I can share, so that when they start to speak to these businesses, they'll know what a risk pot is. And the main contractors like Balfour Beatty will be a bit more impressed because they've got a small business there who's already got a risk pot sitting.
Yeah.
It's things like that I think could be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to come back to the risk pot analogy there because that's really interesting to me. But you mentioned about how turnover is one of those things that like gives people the fear to talk about, but actually turnover a lot of the time can be a bit of a vanity project.
Yeah.
Like turnover doesn't really mean anything if you're not making any profit. So it all comes down to like your margins, your expenses, your overheads. Like, are you managing to control your costs so that you can actually get out what you're putting in the first place? Obviously, like when you're tendering for contracts as well from the offset, a lot of people try and think, okay, I'll go in really cheaply, I'll win the project, and then I'll be able to take more on as a result of that. But actually, it's a hard lesson to learn because then you work so hard, and sometimes it can actually destroy your business because you don't have the resources to be able to fund it to fund your business to do a contract at that level with the margin that you're not earning.
Yeah, I agree.
And we often hear that for contractors that have taken on that first big project and they've not priced it correctly, they either just scrape by and they're like, why did I do that? And it puts them off maybe going in again.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, they are able to use it as a lesson and then realise actually we need to be pricing at these levels. Yeah. But again, it takes a lot of time to be able to break that down and understand the reason why it didn't work. Do you have any businesses in that scenario that you're working with just now that you can?
Not necessarily from a lower rates perspective, although what you've said is definitely true, and I think sometimes it can then reflect on their client, so the main contractor. So for example, what you've just said, it puts them off.
Yeah.
That's because they then think that in order to get a commercial contract, they always need to go in a really low rate. What I talk about a lot on social media is a bid to deliver. So instead of looking at a package of works and just bidding for it just to win it, which is your low rate, actually, how would your business deliver it? Because if you know that you can deliver it and make a profit, it's worthwhile tendering. But if you know that you're going to bid for it and you're not going to make a profit, it's not worth your while doing it. It's not worth your while investing in that internal resource and time to put a tender together if you know that you're going to be running it at a loss.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree with what you say, and that it can definitely deter businesses, and they just assume that that's just commercial way. Where in actual fact, a lot of businesses now, and a lot of main contractors now are looking at other elements, like I've said already, sustainability, social value, your expertise.
Yeah.
What projects have you done already?
How can they add value?
Yeah. So one thing that I'll always do with my clients when we start off is what projects have you done already? So we've got a paint and decorating company that we work with, and they do really stunning hotels, and they're starting to talk about it a bit more now. But there's hotels everywhere, so you don't actually need to be on Public Contract Scotland doing smaller jobs. If you've got that hospitality experience, we should really be promoting you as that sort of leader in the hospitality sector.
An industry expert.
Yeah, of course. And I think, again, it's just how you sell yourself. There's a bit of marketing there as well, on how do you put yourself out there in front of those clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to like that risk pot that you mentioned, obviously we always talk about it. It's really good to have a reserve in the business. Obviously you need to make sure that you've got that kind of rainy day fund. And I think a lot of people would rather sometimes use a rainy day fund to invest in new projects rather than looking at other ways to be able to source it or cushion themselves. So I think like that risk pot is really important, especially if you're talking like that's part of the tendering process. They talk about what's your risk pot. And if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, that's my risk pot here, but they're saying, okay, well, you want to invest in all these other things, then how do you manage what gets spent where? And I think, as you mentioned, like the taboo around finance and actually thinking, how can we use finance as a tool for growth? That's the message that we deliver. It's all about, don't think about finance as a negative thing. It really does help you push forward. You just have to make sure you're managing it correctly and you've got the right products and the right solutions in place to be able for it to pay off. And I think that goes along with you're going in for the right contracts, you've priced it correctly, you understand your margins, you know your overheads, and you can factor in the cost of finance as part of all of that. So that actually is a full system to get you there, rather than it just being one element that you've thought of and then you're just hoping for the best.
I'm sure you've got, I'm making an assumption that you've probably worked with some businesses who know that they're going to take on a bigger project, and they come to you and they say, right, we're getting ready to take on this project and we need a bit of a buffer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately though, you probably find that they've done that because they've had a lesson learned already, whereas some of the smaller businesses that I'm working with just really need to take my word for it.
Yeah.
And for them to get that line of credit, it's a bit like, oh, I'm not really sure. And again, I just think having these open conversations to say, the bigger businesses that you look up to, they are not operating without any debt.
Yeah, they're not self-funded.
Yeah, they're not self-funded. And there's a lot of, I mean, some of the tier ones, they brag about their cash, which is great, you know, but essentially when we are looking at a sort of smaller, medium-sized business, we don't really need to be looking and trying to gloat about how much cash you have. We really need to be just talking about how you're going to start to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. With the smaller contractors, I speak to a lot of people as well that come to me and they say, oh, I want to start to grow, I want to do more with my business, I just don't know how, I don't know where to start. And I think that's something where it's like they don't just need finance support, they need so much more than that. They need somebody to kind of really show them the way forward of how to tender for contracts, what systems and processes they need to have in place, what accreditations they might need, all these things. So finance is just one element of it. It's incredibly important, but without all the other stuff, then you're almost setting yourself up to fail. Yeah. So I think it's really important that the people then that are in that position that see themselves as wanting to be these bigger contractors or aspire to be these bigger contractors, that they put the right foundations in place. So try and learn off of everybody else's mistakes rather than make your own.
100%, yeah. And I think that's the important thing about the Skilled Trades Network that myself and my husband have created.
Yeah.
You know, the industry can be quite competitive.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, if we're a joiner and you're a joiner, we wouldn't really talk to each other. What I'm trying to do is facilitate some of these closer relationship where maybe a smaller joinery firm can learn from a more experienced joinery firm. But also from a main contractor's perspective, if we're looking at a joinery firm who's got a really low turnover but they've got appetite, there's a lot of barriers that allow us to get into contract with them. Again, the main contractor will just look at the risk and be like, you know, it's just too risky to take on. Whereas if they partner with another business, maybe someone who's a bit more established or even someone who's just equally as big. So when you come together, your capabilities have grown, they've increased. So what we're trying to do in the Skilled Trades Network is bring some of these businesses together and say, let's not compete, let's just collaborate.
Yeah.
And again, if we can get some of these mid-sized businesses who have learned a lot, and they can share that with the smaller businesses and act as a sort of mentor, I think it'd be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. Because I think it's the case in not just the construction industry, across the board. Yeah. Like, you don't want to work with your competition, and obviously there's a lot of reasons why you don't, but in that scenario when you can actually help each other grow, and there's enough work out there for everybody within that sector. I think that's part of the reason we know that there's a skills deficit. We know that there's a lot more work out there than what there is. Resource. There's no shortage. Yeah. And it actually makes sense that we can all upskill ourselves as a result of working together rather than working against each other. So I love that. I think that's a great concept, and hopefully more people within the sector will see that as an opportunity rather than think protection. I want my own business. It's all about us, and actually you can help yourself by helping others, and that's a great learning tool.
Yeah, I think there's the one thing that I really love is that there's enough space for everybody. I say it all the time. You know, in any industry, in any environment, there's enough space for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you.
So if I'm working with a smaller business and I know that they are tendering for a bigger project, if we then come to TSF Finance and we say, right, okay, we want to get this business a line of credit, whatever that may be, or even some asset finance if that's what they're looking at. Yeah. What should they have in place, or what should they be aware of to make that process more streamlined for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To be honest with you, the best thing they can do is be proactive about it. So don't come to us after they're already struggling, because a lot of the times you'll get people within the construction sector specifically coming to us after the money's gone. The cash flow issue has already started, and it's very much arrived, and they've not got long left before they could potentially be going out of business. So it's more of a stress reactor I think if we can, when businesses come to us, the best scenario we can ask for is that they are being proactive about it and they're coming and asking the questions about finance prior to the need so that they can get organised, and it gives us time to obviously sort it. And it would be cheaper as well because then they're not in a distressed state. Yeah. Lenders can see when businesses are struggling, and ultimately you don't want to be flagged as that potential risk. If we can avoid that, then you will be able to access cheaper lenders, better rates and better products, and more products as well. But in terms of this, the basics of being prepared, it's having your financials up to date. A really simple thing to be able to do, like have your VAT quarter submitted on time, pay your VAT on time if you can. If you're going to be struggling with paying your VAT, then again, talk to us in advance of that because we can put funding solutions in place to help them with that too. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that you work with will be CIS. It'll be the opposite. They'll be getting more reclaims, which again is a really great thing for them to be able to understand when their reclaims are coming in. But you have to be able to file on time to be able to get your reclaim on time. So it's one of those things where the ball rolls on all the different things you have to have in place. But finances, your statements up to date. You've got your accounts filed and your VAT quarters are in where they should be is what we can ask for. Yeah. And that the bank statements are healthy, like you're not bouncing payments, you've not got really sporadic balances where you're like making all this money one week and then it's all disappearing the next, which we often find with contractors that are just taking on those projects one at a time. Yeah. And they've not got that pipeline of work, and it's like they'll take on one big project, they'll do it, and then they'll flap with a few smaller projects that there's maybe more domestic stuff for a while until we find the next big one, and then all of a sudden the turnover shoots back up again, but it flies all the way back out the door as soon as they're paid. Yes. So it's like that fluctuation of cash can be seen as a sign of that business is maybe not quite got all their ducks in a row, and how can we help support them? Mm-hmm. And a way that we can do that is, for example, you talk about a line of credit. So if a business is looking to take on a bigger contract, we can help them with that cash flow cycle, and we can help them fund their invoices in advance so they don't have to wait that 30, 60 or sometimes up to 90 days to get paid. And what that will allow them to do is to start taking on more work in similar areas, at similar sizes, or if not more, in terms of bigger contracts again, because their cash flow isn't being completely depleted by each project that they work on. So that's how we can put solutions in place. And obviously we've got other products that we can utilise, such as like term loans and asset finance, and we can tap into other areas of their business to allow to put that injection of capital in. But leave that to us. Like, we'll come up with solutions based on what the business is trying to achieve. Yeah. And that's how we can really support.
It's funny because you talk about the influx of cash. Yeah. One of my clients referred that as to just being very yo-yo. Yeah. And I thought that's exactly how a lot of businesses operate. Mm-hmm. They get that opportunity, and sometimes they'll have to hire, so they bring on resource, they do the project, and then they've nothing else after that. And from a main contractor's perspective, if you're hiring people and then dropping them and then hire them and dropping them, it looks really bad. And this is why I talk about a pipeline a lot, because we need to be more aware of your business long term, where you need permanent staff and where you maybe need agency or just some temporary or subcontractors. And I think that does definitely tie in with the cash flow, because if you know that you've got your projects lined up, you might only have like a month or 2 months gap, but on a bigger scale, that's fine. Yeah. But whereas if you're going 6 months, like a really high-end commercial job or a high-value commercial job, and then you do 6 months residential because you don't have another commercial job to fill it, it doesn't really look great for your business.
No. Absolutely. And I think as well, from the people that you're hiring as well, if you are looking to take on permanent staff, they'll probably have their own goals and ambitions as to what kind of projects they want to work on. And you've brought them in to work on this big commercial contract and they're loving it too because they like to work, that's the sector they want to work in. Then all of a sudden they're doing these kind of small homer jobs that a lot of these guys, let's be honest, probably do on the side anyway for themselves and thinking, why am I doing this for somebody else when I can do this myself? So I think in terms of giving yourself a really stable team that's committed to your business, and also you can train accordingly to your standards and you can keep that level of quality high, I think is really important. But you obviously have to have the pipeline there to sustain it. Yeah. And a lot of people do worry about the investment up front in permanent staff if they've not got that pipeline. So I think having like probably 6 months, if not to a year's worth of project pipeline is important before you start to take on those decisions like hiring staff, buying more vehicles, equipment, machinery, etc., like whatever the business needs. Because a lot of, again, it's without the pipeline, you can't, that's where the uncertainty comes from. And all the uncertainty is what makes people nervous. Yeah. And that's when obviously they get even more nervous about taking on finance because they don't know if they're going to be able to cover it further down the line.
There's a lot of talk just now on like commercial payment terms. Yeah. And again, it's something that smaller businesses they don't know about it. They expect to submit an invoice and get paid. And someone that I spoke to recently, and I don't judge them at all because they just aren't to know.
Yeah.
You know, but they said, "Oh, I wouldn't work with that business again because I had to wait 8 weeks to get paid." And I said, "So what were your payment terms?" And he says, I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
And again, it's that level of, it's that lack of experience where I try and help, but also some bigger businesses are really struggling with 90-day payment terms. And I think that tier one contractors in specific are actually getting better at it. They are sometimes held accountable to prompt payment, whereas on LinkedIn, I see so many businesses complaining about not being paid on time, and there's a lot of businesses folding because of it. Do you experience any of that with your clients, or you know, do you have you ever had a sort of experience where you know of a client who hasn't been paid on time and they've maybe not came to you as soon as early as what they should have?
Yeah, all the time. We get people coming to us asking for some cash flow support because of somebody paying late. More often, like, it happens a lot. And it's obviously out with their control. They weren't expecting it. But a lot of the case as well is because they have self-funded. Like, they've used their own money. So their own money and their own capital is at risk.
Yeah.
When we put some like credit lines in place, for example, there's lenders that are specifically set up for invoicing and payment terms that could potentially, when things run late, you can have credit control also looked after by a third party, which is the lender themselves. They can be the one chasing it for you. They can be the one that are trying to push. You can also have things like bad debt protection, or credit insurance is sometimes what it's called, where you can actually protect yourself against non-payment within your business.
Wow.
And a lot of these products can be bolted onto that credit line. So whether it's credit control or bad debt protection, and that actually helps that business owner take on work more comfortably because they know that they've got that product sitting behind them, and it gives them a bit more comfort that, see, if that business were to fail or they weren't to pay me, I've got an insurance behind me that I'll still get paid what I need to get paid. And again, it just helps businesses feel more confident to grow. And a lot of businesses, when I talk about it, they have no idea that product even existed.
No.
Not a clue.
Not a clue. And this is the barrier to commercial contracts as well, because a lot of these businesses we don't want to work in commercial because apparently tier ones are not worth the hassle. I'm like, yeah, but it's not really about not working with them. It's about how do we protect your business.
Yep.
It's not about saying, yeah, we're not going to go there. You know, what do we need to put around you to protect your business so that when you do work on those projects, your risk exposure is limited. And it's exactly what you've said. I mean, some of those points that you just made, those bolt-ons, they would massively protect that business and give them a nice security blanket to enter into a bigger contract. I was actually at a networking event recently, and there was a gentleman giving a talk, and he was, I want to say, it's a sort of facilities management company, and the one thing he brought up was invoice finance, and he said it was the one thing that he introduced into his business that helped him sleep at night. And I thought, why are we not talking about it more?
Yep, absolutely. Well, that's interesting that he had that viewpoint, because so many people see invoice finance as a negative thing, as a last resort, as, well, your business is going to fail, because it can be utilised to help bring businesses out of a distressed state, or like help them start again if things have unfortunately gone the wrong way for them. Like, there's ways that product definitely does help, but it's not actually the reason it was designed. The reason it was designed was to help businesses grow, be able to take on more contracts, take on more work, and do it sustainably, where they've got the cash flow cycle behind them, the line of credit behind them to support the cash flow cycle. And essentially, the product has developed over the years as well. You don't have to have a full invoice finance, like where it's your full, all your debtors, all your so everybody that owes you money has to be on that ledger. We have options now where it can be more pick and choose in one-off spot. It's harder to access, don't get me wrong, because the product's still new, it's quite limited, but it's not it doesn't not exist. And there's other ways that we can leverage other assets, like property, for example, if you own your own commercial premises, or maybe you've got a couple of buy-to-lets because you used to do flips before you became a bigger contractor. We can leverage assets like that to be able to give you a line of credit that's more like an overdraft, to give you that dip in and out. But yeah, invoice finance is more specific, where you can have those bolt-ons like we mentioned, where you can really protect your business. But you can also factor in what we have our own invoice finance comparison calculator, where we actually can plug in all the costs to your facility, for example, with multiple lenders, and we can see how it affects your margin based on your forecasted turnover. And then that allows you to then factor in the cost of finance based on how much you think you're going to be able to achieve. So it helps when you're pricing. It helps understand where you might have to, if, for example, you're going from 60-day payment terms up to 90-day payment terms, it might be like 45 days, end of month. You know, those small changes of those couple of weeks can make such a difference. And if we know that that's going to be the payment terms, we can tweak it on the calculator so that you can see, or at least try and forecast what those costs are going to look like. And then you can price more. You can price better.
This is what I try and do with businesses, is to give them that confidence to push back and say, these are our payment terms. They won't always get their, you know, their final position, but to at least have that confident negotiation to say, this is what my business needs. In order for my business to deliver it, to deliver this package of work, it needs to be 30 days. You know, it can't be anything else. And it's to have that confidence that if it's 90 days or even if it's 60 days, the business can't sustain it. So don't do it. Yeah, it's just to have that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think even on that, when you're going in on the negotiation, a lot of the time you are dealing with these bigger companies. It's black and white. There's no negotiation on payment terms. That is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. Having the knowledge to be able to price according to that difference, because you've got the line of credit to support you, that line of credit will cost you money. The longer that the balance is outstanding for that particular contract or that particular work is going to cost you more money. So if you can factor it into the price that you're putting forward to these people in your tender, then you've covered it. You've already given yourself that extra layer of protection.
The reality is though, is there isn't enough resource. So main contractors aren't always in that prime position to just push back and to say, well, it's 60 days or nothing, or it's 30 days or nothing. You know, we don't have, the industry doesn't have the businesses, it doesn't have the capabilities that it once had. So actually SMEs now are in a much better position to negotiate what works for their business. The issue that we have is that they don't always know what works for their business. They're just going into blind and they're putting a rate down, they're submitting it and they're going, there's our rates. Was in actual fact, if we really looked at how you could deliver it, and like I said, if we look at the cash flow aspect of it, you would feel more confident to say, right, this is our rates, but this is exactly what we need, and this is how the payment terms we need in order to sustain that cash flow.
Yeah, go in confident, you know your numbers, you've got clarity, and then gives you the confidence to have that conversation.
Exactly that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for everything that you've spoke to us about today. I think it'll be an incredible help. I think a lot of people will resonate with what you spoke about, especially those kind of smaller contractors that are really looking to grow or feel like they have the capability but don't know where to start. Just before we finish up, what would you say is like the first step that a business owner should take who feel like they're in the positions that we've spoke about today? If they were to reach out to you, what would be the first step?
The first step is having a strategy in place, because a lot of businesses, they just get their head down and they're doing one job and then the next and the next. You know, what I do is we set out a day and we sit and we look at who your ideal clients are, you know, what your capabilities are, how many people have you got working for you, and what do they need from a project to keep them busy. Tradespeople typically mark their success on vans, so they always say, "Oh, what, get more vans on the road."
I've noticed that. Yeah,
I like to say, so how many vans have you got? How many vans do you want on the road? And it's how do we get them to that point? And I think the first step is to say, where are you now? You know, what jobs are you doing? How is that working for you? You know, is it difficult? Is it you know, is it a real slog? Or, you know, have you tried commercial already? Have you done a project? How was that? It's that lessons learned piece that small businesses don't do, that big contractors spend a lot of time on. Have a lot of boardroom meetings on lessons learned, whereas smaller businesses, they don't have the time or capability for it, capacity for it. So I think the next step would be, you know, how do we action that? You know, who do we need down the table? What clients do we need? What support do you need? Have you got your accreditations? Do we need a health and safety advisor? Do you need finance? Do you need, you know, some work winning strategies or bid support? So it's really about, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And what's the bit in between that we can do? What support do you need in the middle of it? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like setting out that roadmap for them, isn't it?
Roadmap, yeah.
That's why I would like to use a roadmap. Okay, brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everybody got some value out of that. And if anybody does feel like they need some support, please reach out to Pamela. And I'm sure she'll be able to get you started with that roadmap.
Thank you.